Hello, everyone. I see there's 4 or 5 of you who are logged in already. Make sure you turn up your volume so you can hear me and test out the chat. If you only want me to be able to see your message, click on to everybody and change that to admin. And let me know if you can hear me. Write me a message, say hi, tell me who you are, if you can hear me speaking to you now. Hello again, everyone. Just testing out the audio, making sure you can hear me. So if you are logged into the room and you can hear me speaking to you, go over to that chat window on the right side of your screen and write me a little message to let me know that you can hear me. Say hello, tell me your name, say where you're from, whatever you'd like to say. Hi, Josie. Glad you're here and you could hear me. You're going into your 4th year of teaching language arts. That's great. I'm just about to start my 5th year. Again, we'll be starting in about 8 or 9 minutes. I see there's 8 of you who are registered now. So uh, if you're if you're logged in and you can hear me, and you see that chat window over to the right, take a moment and write a message. You can either click on to everybody or to admin. That'll go just to me, and say hello so I know that you can hear me. Andrew, hey there, buddy. Really glad you're here. You're currently going into year 7 of teaching language arts. That's awesome. Hey, Danielle. No need for yikes. Those are 15 years of experience and knowledge. I'm really glad you're logged in here. Thanks for sharing your time. So about 6 or 7 more minutes until we get started. Just so you know, for the preview, throughout the workshop, at some points you'll see a slide deck like you see right now. At some points you'll see a couple of videos where I demonstrated some of the more technical technical things. This way, you know, we don't have to wait for loading and whatnot. And then some points I'll be able to answer your questions and say hello like this. All right, so that's just so you know what you'll be seeing on your screen in case things change. No need to be alarmed. Again, for the few people who have just logged in, if you want, you can write a message just to me by clicking to the bottom of the chat window and clicking on to admin. If you click on to admin, you can write me a message just to let me know that you can hear me. Sometimes there can be some audio problems, so you can just let me know. Hi, Becky. Thanks for logging in here. I'm glad we have a science and social studies teacher joining us amongst the many teachers I know who are English language arts teachers who are participating. A few more minutes and we'll get started. Hey, Aaron. Another language arts teacher from New Jersey. Glad that you're here. New Jersey, I think, is the most represented group here. A couple more people logging in, so we'll just go right up to that 7 o'clock time before we start. I'm going to put a link in the chat. If you did not receive your copy of the resource guide that goes along with the workshop, you can click the link that should appear in the chat in a moment. It should be pretty clear during the workshop when listening to my voice will be sufficient, and you can look into the resources in the resource guide if you'd like, and when maybe I'm showing something on the screen that it's important for you to see. So feel free to have that document open and follow along during the workshop. So for the few of you who've just joined as we get closer, thanks for signing in to the Google Docs for Social Learning workshop. I'm Gerard Dawson. Before we begin, just want to make sure everyone's audio is working. So if you hear me and you can write a quick message to me, you can select to admin down at the bottom of the chat window if you want to keep it private. But just say hello. Let me know if I can hear you. I mean, if you can hear me. I'll give another minute or two just for any stragglers logging in. All right, hello everyone. Again, thank you so much for logging in tonight. This is the Google Docs for Social Learning online workshop. My name is Gerard Dawson. First, just a quick reminder again, you may want to use headphones. There will be a few short videos, and if not, just make sure your volume is up to a comfortable level. First, I'd like to welcome you. I'd also like to compliment you. It's an evening in the middle of the summer. We're teachers, so I know a lot of our colleagues are probably somewhere sitting on a porch listening to the crickets. Well, crickets are not out yet in New Jersey, but enjoying the good weather, enjoying a cold beverage. But instead, we're here to talk about teaching with Google Docs. I'd say, though, they're the crazy ones, not us, because we're going to be here getting better together. So again, thank you. I know several of you in person and the rest of you I know digitally. So here's a little bit about myself. I teach English and I teach journalism to students at Hightstown High School in New Jersey. And between those classes, I see students from grades 9 to 12 on most days. Before that, I taught for 2 years at Mount Olive High School up in the woods of North Jersey before I came to my current position. And so this fall will begin my 5th year as a full-time teacher. So that brings me to my first question. It sounds a little rude of me as the host. Why are you here? It's very welcoming. You're probably here for one of two reasons. You're either interested in the latest developments in ed tech, educational technology, and you want to see what I have to offer that you might not know already. If that's the case, I'm confident that I'll share some ideas with you that either are new to you or that maybe I'll help clarify for you. The other possibility is that you've been thrown into the world of teaching with technology and you're trying to figure out how to keep up. So maybe your school got some new computers or some new initiatives, and you're taking this workshop to try to educate yourself. So with that said, I'm actually going to take a quick poll. You should see in the right hand column. It says, how would you describe your familiarity with Google Docs? I've never used it in class. I've used it to share documents. I've used it to share documents and leave comments. I've used it in creative ways. And move over I should be teaching this workshop, feel free to select this one. I can facilitate guest speakers using the Webinar Jam platform, so don't be shy. Well, great. It seems like we have a a wide spectrum of responses, with the majority of people saying that they've used it in some creative ways. So I'll definitely be looking to hear about those ways throughout the workshop. So what specifically we're going to cover today is a pretty wide spectrum of things. Definitely an overview of using Google Docs, which I've named Google Docs for Social Learning. But specifically, we'll learn some lessons that you could use for individual class periods or however your classes are arranged. We'll look at some examples of projects that you can guide your students through over multiple periods or multiple days. We'll look at some tools for feedback and assessment. But most importantly, we'll group these ideas together under a mindset. The mindset is the most important piece, because once you understand the capabilities of Google Docs or really any teaching tool, you apply the tool to suit your needs as those needs arise, instead of just throwing out lessons and ideas randomly. And the main idea, if I just sum it up in a sentence, is what you should see on your screen now or soon. And that is that instead of thinking of Google Docs like a replacement of Microsoft Word, think of it more like its own social network. Right, so if we look at Google Docs and Microsoft Word side by side, they look like the exact same thing. But when you begin to treat it more as a social network or a social writing platform, you change your teaching, and at least in my experience, I improved student learning. So of all the things we learn today or go over today, hopefully the mindset of thinking of Google Docs as a social learning and social media tool is one that sticks. Just noticing, Max, you said you're asking for a microphone test. Hold on one. I'll help you out with that in a second. I'm just talking to one specific attendee here who said they had some sound troubles, and Max was going to potentially speak too. So Max, just let me know if you have admin capability in a moment. So anyway, I want to talk briefly about how I came to right here sharing these ideas with you. I think a lot of teachers would agree that as an English teacher, there's two primary parts. There's teaching writing and there's teaching literature. There's also speaking, listening, and viewing, but those are the two primary camps. For me, I've always loved writing. And when I started to teach English, it was teaching writing much more than teaching literature that made me love the job. And reading professional texts like Kelly Gallagher, Penny Kittle, it became clear to me that most students did not write enough in English class, and asking them to write more seemed to be one quick step for me in the right direction. So the problem was that actually resulted in a small disaster, which was my desk. I had an accordion folder, and even my car, I had papers everywhere. So there was a lot of times where, because I was having students write more and collecting all of this writing, there were papers strewn all over my desk, and that was not good. It also became clear to me that communicating with students through feedback and through conferencing was disproportionately effective at helping students learn. In fact, I want to share a quote with you that I just heard recently from Penny Kittle that really emphasizes kind of an epiphany that I had as I began to have students write more and really focus on feedback with them. She said, mini lessons are the most efficient but least effective way of teaching, and conferencing is the least efficient but most effective. So I think a lot of us teachers would agree with that conferencing and feedback take up that most precious asset for us, which is our time. So over the past few years, I've worked pretty deliberately to try to gather tools and develop lessons that allow students to write a lot and communicate with me and each other, get a lot of feedback, and just as a nice side effect, not use too much paper. So all those ideas together are what I've decided to call Google Docs for social learning. Just going to do a quick check again and see. Oh, hey, Maxwell. Just let you want to do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. So am I live to everyone on the webinar?
I believe you should be. I made you a
Okay,
presenter, so you should be.
great. Well, hello everyone. My name is Maxwell Brody. I'm one of the creators of Kaizena. Kaizena is a feedback platform that integrates with Google Docs to help you provide more feedback in less time, and higher quality feedback too. And we may get a chance. Well, I think we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about it later on. But I'm looking forward to sharing what our product does and maybe the story behind it as well. So glad to be here.
Yeah. So using Kaizena has been such a big part of me being able to use Google Docs for this idea that I call social learning. When I was talking to Max about the workshop, he agreed and expressed interest that he could talk about it a little bit. So we'll hear a little bit from him later.
Thanks, Joe.
The three ideas that really connect, that give Google Docs this social concept, are that publishing and posting are extremely easy. That collaboration is extremely smooth. In other words, students can communicate with each other and with the teacher seamlessly. And then also there's this concept of Google Docs being web-based. What I think some teachers fail to recognize is that each time they create a Google Doc, they're basically publishing a web page. It's one web page. So within that, there's hyperlinking capabilities. There's the ability to see revision history, and those can be tapped into to help students really create these information-rich compositions. So those are three ideas that are important to remember. From our quick poll in the beginning, it seemed like many of you have a basic understanding of Google Docs. Sorry, Max, I had you up there on the screen for a minute, but we're back at the screen. One thing that, even if you're a total beginner, I'd like everybody to get a sense of is sharing permissions. This is something that if you're a beginner and you just get this, the rest of the ideas in the workshop will make a lot more sense. And if you're intermediate and advanced, we'll be spending a few minutes on it and then we'll move on. So sharing permissions are how you control who can see the document, but then also how the document can be manipulated. And there are three primary ways that you can set the sharing permissions. If after we go over these ideas, you feel that they're still totally foreign to you, the chart of ideas that I present in a moment is also in the resource guide, so you can take your time and go back through them then. So the the three sharing permissions that we have are can edit, can comment, and can view. So they're kind of at extremes with can edit and can view, with then can comment being in the middle. Even if you are totally new to Google Docs and you don't understand these ideas yet, there's really just one part of this chart that you can try to understand, and that's the gray box in the upper left-hand corner with the question, why am I sharing this doc with students? You need to ask yourself this before using Google Docs in your classroom, especially when you begin to use it beyond simply for having students write essays and submit them. You need to understand the various restrictions and freedoms that come with the sharing permissions. So we'll look at the two extremes. For can edit, not only can you use it for the obvious examples of having students do work or have a student taking notes on their own document, but you can also create can edit documents and share them with a group of students for something like group brainstorming. Or you can have a long running document throughout the whole year with can edit permission for the students to have a dialogue between you and the student. So maybe you leave feedback for a student in a document and they write back to you. On the other hand, looking now under the can edit bad for column, you wouldn't want to set can edit permissions when students are viewing other students' work, right? If you're sharing a mentor text with your class and you accidentally leave it through can edit permission, then you can have students either intentionally or unintentionally changing each other's work. Same thing goes for the directions. If you're sharing a document with students that is strictly the directions for an assignment and they're not doing their work there, you don't want to use can edit permission. Looking now to the far right, the can view permission, this is basically the opposite. Notice that the bad for in can edit is kind of copied over to the good for of can view. If you have projects from last year and you want your students this year to check them out, you want to set it to can view permission so they can only look at it and can't change it. Same thing for model texts, rubrics, directions. Then can view is bad for anything students need to manipulate. That middle column, can comment, is the murky area. I noticed that a lot of the interactive ways that I use Google Docs with groups or the whole class actually falls into can comment, and we'll look at that soon when we look at the concept of connected reading or creating a living text. Okay, so to those of you who said you were total beginners, make sure after the workshop you come back to this chart and really understand can edit, meaning students can edit the document, can comment, meaning they can't edit but they can comment on it, and can view. So one more practical concept. I realized when starting to use Google Docs in more creative ways that lots of times things would come up in class that I would want the students to do on a Google Doc. Maybe I even wanted the whole class to be on a Google Doc. And I needed a quick way to do that, to get documents and information to the students. So there was the process of having students send me their email, write it down, but I realized a very simple thing to do in the beginning of the year, even towards the first week, is to collect the student's first name, last name, and email in a form. All right, so just a quick example. I'm going to switch over to my screen now. For those of you again who are beginners, I'll show you what I mean. So here's my Google Drive. I'll go to New, scroll down to Google Forms, and select a new Google form. This will be student info form. Let's say it's for period 3. That's titling the form. And I can also do the same thing there. All I need are 3 questions. First, we'll say, what is your first name? I'll make sure this is a text response question that's required. Add item. What is your last name? Text response question that's required. And then, what is your email? Okay, so at that point, that's the entirety of the form that really allows me to quickly share information and documents with students in an organized way. So that's what I create, and then the students see this. So then you have to ask, how will I get this to the students before I have their emails? I've thought of at least 3 ways. The first can be to go to Google URL shortener. Let's say you're in the computer lab with a whiteboard. Take that form, take the address, throw it into Google URL shortener, and now you have a short URL that I think is manageable to write on the board and have students type into their web browser. That's one way. You can also just choose to send it to the students in a remind text message, right? That's another. Or if you have a class website, you can paste this as a link onto your class website. Okay, so you can even just put kind of irrelevant information, but I'm just going to show you the experience. I'll put the link to the form into the chat. Just click on there. You can fill in irrelevant information if you want, just to go through the experience of what the students would do. Okay, so take a moment and fill out the form. This way I can show you what your view will be like after students have filled out the form. Max, are you able to click the link that's in the chat and go to the form?
Already did.
Okay, thanks. So now everyone, I'm going to click over to the responses. So in case this is your first time doing this, you see what you get on the teacher's end. I click on view responses, and now I see the 3 of you that have filled out the form with your information. We'll take just another minute or so. Again, fill out the form, but you don't have to put in real information. You can make it up if you'd like to. So by doing this, we'll have all of the student information in one place, and we can use this to quickly share documents with groups of students or the whole class. Okay, so we see 7 or 8 of you have filled it out. So we're going to come back to that at a couple points. Those are the 2 practical ideas that I wanted to ensure you understood, especially for those of you who are totally new to using Google Docs in the classroom. All right, so I'm going to switch back to the slides for a moment. For the remainder of the workshop, we'll get into the specific things that you can do with the students in the classroom, and it's divided into 3 areas: making literacy authentic, facilitating collaboration, and turning feedback into a conversation. That last idea is why I've asked Max to speak to us for a few minutes at the end, towards the end. one of the capabilities that Google Docs provides is the way to mimic reading and writing experiences that students and adults have now in the digital world. So we have connected writing and connected reading experiences because they're often social. They often involve a richness of information that is different than writing in paper, and there's often a collaborative ease of sharing that these that's involved with our reading and writing. All right, so the first concept is that digital reading is almost always, by definition, connected reading. Okay, so I'm one of those people who thinks that paper books are important, and I think they're here to stay. I think we'll always have them. But in addition to paper reading, students today, they encounter this whole new set of experiences when they read digitally. And a lot of that newness, if you will, comes from the social aspect of digital reading. So the one idea I'm going to share with you, and again, I'll put a link in the chat, is the concept of the living text. It's a fairly simple idea, and it uses the Can Comment feature with a small group of students on a Google Doc to what I feel is create an authentic reading experience for the students. So I'm going to take a moment, put the link in the chat, and you'll be able to see this document. It says copy of How to Read Literature Like a Professor. So again, this is what I call the living text, and it's a fairly straightforward idea with good results, in my opinion. So first I put a chapter of our literature reference book into a Google Doc, and then I created several copies of this document for small groups of students to use. So there were groups of 4 or 5 students, and they had their own copy of the document. I'll switch to it now, in fact. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that. So we took this chapter of our reference book and put it in small groups in the Google Doc, and I gave the students Can Comment permission. So in their group of 4 or 5 students, they read through the chapter, and I knew that there were tons of references in here that were foreign to the students. Just from the one paragraph we see towards the bottom of the first page, Virginia Woolf, Percy Shelley, Anne Quinn. The students are not going to know all these names. However, because of the capability of Google Docs with the commenting feature and the hyperlinks, we can easily create this information-rich document that then becomes a better resource than the students initially had. So their task was to read the chapter and do a certain number of annotations where they found a vocabulary word or a reference that was foreign to them, and then add an explanatory comment. So you can see the example I put here. It was pretty straightforward. I just said, here's the Wikipedia article about Virginia Woolf, and I put the link to that Wikipedia article. But the thing was then, we took these annotated documents, the copies of the chapter, and then we used that to facilitate an in-person conversation as well. So we had this connected reading experience online of creating this resource-rich chapter. And then in class, when we discussed the chapter, I had a student in each group come up to our interactive whiteboard, the Starboard, bring up their chapter, scroll through the various annotations, and click the relevant hyperlinks as we discussed. Okay, so this is what I call the living text, and it's a pretty simple way, I think, to if you were new to using Google Docs in a more in a way other than just with writing, this is a pretty low barrier to entry way to do it. Share the document with a few students, put an article in there, and let them find words and references that are foreign to them and go from there. All right, so that was one example. Like I mentioned, you could easily do this with an article that you'd like students to discuss. So I've created one example just for us, actually, to show you another possibility with this. So I'm going to, once again, put a link in the chat for us. And this is slightly different. It's still, I think, effective because of its simplicity. So if you can find that article I put in the chat, it says sample connected reading article. You'll see that I've taken an article from Inc.com. I tried to do one that was slightly relevant to our workshop here, since we're engaging in online education. And instead of giving the readers a task to do on their own, I preloaded some comments in the margin and have left them open for the readers to answer. So in the directions, it says, read the following article, which appeared on Inc.com. Answer the questions I've posed by responding to my comments. You may also pose your own questions by making a new comment, which is either Control-Alt-M or Insert Comment. You may respond to the questions and comments of others. Remember to exercise responsible digital citizenship during your discussion. All right, so again, I think any learning is better when it's a little bit interactive. So why don't we take a few moments. The first highlight is the headline of the article. Post your responses to my questions by clicking on the questions, clicking in the reply box, typing your answer. Here's your answer here. If anybody else says something that you would like to add on to or agree or disagree with, you can use the @ symbol to actually mention them, kind of like on Twitter. Okay, so this will be more beneficial if more people participate. So we'll take a few minutes and scan through the article and see what you can add to the article by responding to my questions. Oh, thanks, Danielle. I know, I noticed that's one of the most frequently asked questions is how do students comment? So by putting those in parentheses, it's very helpful. The other one is adding links. So I could say you can also add links, which is Control-K. Andrew is also asked how to make comments on a daily basis, so that validates my directions there. Notice that, oops, this is what can happen. You can accidentally click resolve on the comments, but you just have to go to reopen. Let's hear your thoughts. Maybe focus on the first question there. To what extent is the headline a fact? If you were someone who disagreed with this headline, what might you say? I'd just like us to see the effect that multiple people answering on the same comment has. Again, you can make your own comment or you can reply to my comment. Max, have you added a comment to the document?
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a longer one, so
Oh, okay.
I haven't hit reply yet.
Okay. Josie makes a good point. So notice I can mention Josie in my reply to her comment. I can say back to her. All right, thank you, those of you who've participated. So you can see what we've done in terms of reading was relatively superficial because we read the headline and were able to share some relatively deep thinking about it in the comments. And I find that, at least in my own reading, once people start to comment, which this could be argued by some to be a, a drawback, I'm actually distracted from the article to an extent, and I'm more engaged in the comments until they stop, and then I go back to the article. So I think the idea to emphasize here is that this is not replacing any other type of reading that our students should be doing in the classroom. However, I do think it's a new type of reading that if students are going to be doing it, and as adults, I think we can agree that the social aspect to reading is certainly present online. I think we need to deliberately teach and model some skills that have to do with connected reading. So this is a quick example, both that living text example with explaining references and also just the margin discussion example. Both show how we can use the social capabilities and the web-based capabilities of Google Docs to help students be better connected readers. I'm going to switch back briefly to the slides here. And the other half of digital literacy is digital writing. And what I found is that through the digital composition through Google Docs, and especially the elements of design, hyperlinking, adding images, and the professional appearance that documents can take on, students get invested in their work because the writing they're creating when they're doing digital writing, it looks like writing that they see online. And it's information rich in a way that requires deep thinking to plan and to compose. So this is what I think is one of the cooler pieces of student work that I've encountered recently. I'm going to show you an essay from my student named Harry, and he really shows that the richness of information that students can embed into their writing with Google Docs. And I would say the claim to fame that he has is that he actually, in my opinion, is one of the only people who's ever made a joke using nothing but links. All right, so I'm going to I'm going to again put the digital essay into the chat there. And I'll also open it up in the screen share here. So if you're having trouble loading the document, you can click back over to the screen share and follow along with me, or you can look at your own copy there. Let's see, I see 3 of you, 4 of you are on the document with me. So Harry wrote for his multi-genre paper about what he called the anti-vaccine non-debate. Of course, it's a topic that a lot of people have felt strongly about. And he did a great job of communicating his thesis about this. To give you a little background, the multi-genre project is one where students choose a topic of interest and they write about it in a variety of ways, variety of genres. So they write expository, narrative, poetry. They can write fictional or transcribed dialogues, anything they need to get their ideas across. So just from, if I zoom out a little bit, just from Harry's title page here, you can see he's used this clean image to really create a professional effect. And the ease with which he's able to add an image is some of the power of Google Docs. You can, again, it might help if you jump onto my screen for a moment here. All he needs to do is go to Insert Image, and then he can even do a Google search, and we'll be able to find images right in there. He can take, if he wanted, he could take a snapshot of himself. Hi, everybody. And he could put that right into his essay. So this is an incredible capability of Google Docs. But that's really only the beginning of it. What I think is one of his smartest pieces of this digital essay is when he wrote the old New York Times editorial. Here's where he uses hyperlinking in a way that I don't think students would do if they were writing, well, definitely on paper or in something like Microsoft Word or a non-web-based tool. So he has an asterisk at the title or at the heading, and you follow the asterisk and it says, "You have disabled ad block advertisements. Thanks for supporting the old New York Times." So we click over to the link, and mind you, this is a document that he has created as a supplement, and he's just kind of poking fun at the ad-rich nature of online reading now. We're just bombarded with this page of advertisements. So you scroll down, and he has this sentence where he mentions aluminum and hyperlinks it. But again, we've just fallen into his trap of the ads again. And if you scroll down further, it says, "Did you know? Every 1,000 clicks gives the old New York Times a single cent after taxes." So that was his way of, kind of making a joke about the nature of online reading. I won't bring us through, but these are also links back to the ad page. But then, as he goes to the bottom, when he mentions a survey by this organization YouGov, now he links to an actual website, yougov.com, and we see the headline, "Young Americans Most Worried About Vaccines." So what I like here is that by including this link here, he really is engaging with the readers in a new way, because now we're forced to make a decision. Do we stop and read the headline, then just exit out and click back? Do we read the entire article, think about the context and the implications for the current piece we're reading, or do we just skip it, right? So he has a smart use of hyperlinking in this piece. Excuse me. There's one last example here. He has this audio transcript of a a father and certain other figures about vaccinations, including a doctor. So we have the normal transcript here, which this is fictional. He wrote it, and then the tape ends. So we read on the rest of his paper, which is 19 pages long. And we get to the bottom, which we think this is the end of kind of the entertaining experience. He has some endnotes, and he has a works cited. And then we see this one line at the end. You've reached the end of the paper. Bonus. Tape number 7 of the audio narrative. We go there, and here's another separate document of his own that he's linked to. Here he includes kind of like the missing tape that was found at the end of the experience. So he creates an element of mystery and suspense by adding in this extra link to this last part of the conversation. So if you think about it, he's really storytelling by using hyperlinks here. He's used it for humor. He's used it for adding context and information. And then at the end, he uses it for this payoff of the story. And this is also in the resource guide, so you can take a moment to go through it more carefully later. But you may want to consider how this this experience of digital writing, all of the thought that Harry had to go through to plan this out and to think about when to link and how to set up that payoff at the end of his paper, and then to decide to do it through a separate document, gives it more of a journey feeling for the reader. So that's an example of digital writing that students can do with Google Docs, and it really emphasizes the intentionality that students need in their decision-making process and the authenticity, I think, of the writing when they're doing digital writing. So again, coming back to the mindset concept of Google Docs, as I've been hinting at, Docs to me is a bad name. It's more of a connected workspace. It's not just a document. So by learning to use it that way is when we really tap into the power of this concept of social learning with Google Docs. And Danielle mentioned before the idea of research and how the internet has changed research entirely. So I'm going to, again, put a link into the chat of what my class called the Research Rally. I say at the bottom, come up with a better name, because it's not the best name, I think. Just had some alliteration. So I'm going to put this link in there. This was when, going back to the sharing permissions, this was a can edit document that was one document for the whole class. So as soon as you go on the document, you'll notice that it's 24 pages. So again, go over to the chat window, click on that top link, and open up the shared research document that I have in the chat. I'll also switch so that my screen shows it. Oops, that's my outline. Here it is. So what you're seeing is one document that 25 students worked on together. At a certain point in the year, we were reading novels that centered around nature as a prominent force. So the students, I had two separate classes that did this. Each selected a nature-related topic to research together as a class. And we actually used something that's now defunct called Google Moderator to select the topics. Basically, if you've ever used Reddit, it works on an upvote down and downvote system to select the most most popular topics. So one class selected animal testing as the topic that they wanted to research together. Another class selected overpopulation. They're both very uplifting topics, but no, they're both very serious, important ones. I'd like to mention I got this idea with some modification from one of my fellow TCNJ graduates, Matt Marone, who actually has his students do something similar to what I'm going to show you now, but then follows it up with a service project outside of class, which is extremely impressive. And I'd like to eventually get towards that. So let me put back the document for a second so you can see it. So here's what students did. First, working on the document all together, they came up with roles. We said, if we're going to research a topic all together, what do we need to do? And how can we organize ourselves? So we came up with these various roles, and the students came up with some of the names for them too. Fact finders, argument acquisition specialists, social butterflies, historians, credibility captains, organization aficionados, and locality lieutenant. So let's see, this was the group that researched overpopulation. So you can see they have this massively organized document that they all worked on at the same time. And if you get down to the yellow area, this to me is where things got most interesting. Here's where we went over a lesson in class on how to email busy people so that they'll respond to you and how to be polite about it. So here you can see there's some screenshots where the students emailed professors, doctors, journalists, and in some cases got a response. Not in all cases, but when they did, it gave this incredible authenticity to the research experience. So this was, again, all the students working together for one common effort. Often, I've noticed as we apply internet technology to education, it's often an individualization of the learning experience. So what I liked about this was that all 25 of the students were using this platform, Google Docs, to collaborate on one common effort, yet they were still using their own individual abilities to contribute to the effort. So at the end, the students used what they learned to do 5-minute Ignite presentations. If you've ever heard of those, you'll instantly know what I'm talking about. If not, you can Google them later, the Ignite presentation. But this was a way where I used the Ken edit permission, and going back to that Google form, I took all of the students' emails that I had in a spreadsheet, clicked on share, and pasted them all in here, clicked done, and that was really all I had to do. Then it was all about class discussion and collaboration, which got us to this incredible wealth of information. So that was the research rally, which was completely facilitated by the, let's see, I think if we go through the comment section, if you refresh your page, I can open the comments. Well, this is a copy of the document, so the comments are not there. But we use the comments and the chat extensively in order to facilitate the research process. So that's how, in a non-traditional way, the social aspect of Google Docs can help make for an authentic and engaging research project with your class. So the last of the three instructional pieces is really the one that I've spent the most time digging into, and it's the one that I consider myself the most passionate about, and that's turning feedback into a conversation. Like that quote I mentioned in the beginning, conferencing is the most effective means of teaching in my opinion, but it's the least efficient. However, through tools, Doctopus, Google Docs itself, Kaizena, the feedback can become so seamless and also take place even outside of the classroom. So it's becoming more and more efficient. So I think it's important for teachers to have a toolkit of ways to give students feedback. I'm going to start with the simplest and work my way up to more technologically complex. So I think anybody who's watching will find something in this section that's of use to you. So Max, just so you know, I'm going to share two other ways of giving feedback, and then the third one will be Kaizena, and we can hear a little bit about it from you.
Sure, sounds good.
Okay. So the first one is really simple, and at first I was almost surprised that it was working well because it was so simple. And that's called what I call the closing question document. So once again, I'll put a link in the chat there. This is a really simple way to basically do formative assessment at the end of class. So while students are working on a project, lots of times I spend the whole period conferencing with them, but I don't get to talk to every single student in every single class period. So what I would do is create this document, give the whole class can comment permission, so they can't change the document, but they can make a comment, and then ask them to respond to my question in their comment. So here's the document. You can see this top question says, what is the most interesting fact you've learned so far? And below it are other questions that I asked. This was in June, so this is an old one that went right up to the end of the year. So the students in the last 5 minutes of class would look up to the interactive whiteboard, see the big question, then either hop on one of the computers or I think they could even use mobile and leave me a quick comment. They could see each other's comments, but I noticed that they were mostly just noticed in writing their own and sending it to me. And so I had, instead of collecting a packet of exit slips, which then I felt the need to either pass back or throw away, I have this formative assessment right in the margin. Then the next day or a couple days later, as the students moved from researching to writing, I put up the question, what's the best line from your writing so far? Reply there. So here's where, let's see, there may have been comments that were closed. I'm trying to see whether or not more there. Well, anyway, then the third question, this was a very helpful one. What can I help you with between now and Monday? And this was just a really easy way for me to guide my instruction, both for the whole class and for the individuals. You can see the students all took a moment to either ask me a question or leave me some feedback about their own work. So there's a very simple one. It's the closing question. It relies on the can comment permission, displaying a question for the students on the whiteboard or just letting them know that it's in the document. And then for the teacher, getting a nice running record of how students are thinking and progressing throughout a project. So that's one. The next one, I'm actually going to load up a pre-recorded video. This one is called what I call the Google Docs comment spree. And I'm curious to hear your feedback on this one. Oh, Farah, you have a question. Yeah, please ask. You can go ahead and type your question. I'll keep talking just for a moment. One thing I've noticed is especially effective for me is giving students feedback while they're actually writing. Through conversations with teachers, I know a lot of other teachers are a little reluctant to do this because they feel that it might interrupt students' writing process. But from my experience and from talking to students about it, they like getting guidance on their work right from the beginning, or right when they are at that critical moment where they're stuck and the cursor is just blinking, or they have a flurry of ideas and I can just add a comment or a question that keeps those ideas going. So Farah just asked the great question of how do I share with the whole class quickly? I'll show you right now. So let's see, we collected that. So here's that student form, student info form. Let's say I wanted to share the closing question document with everybody here very quickly. I would, from my computer, copy, go to closing question, click share, go to enter the names of email addresses, click paste, and then I would go here to send, and then each of you would receive the document. I won't do that now, but that's how. It's just a matter of, again, copying the email addresses, going to whatever document you'd like, and then clicking send. That's why it's essential, in my opinion, to collect that student information early in the year. This way, you always have it, and you can always share in that way. And Farah, yeah, to answer your follow-up question, when they add the comments, their comments will just show up on the right as they add them. Yeah. And your next question there, when the students entered their information into this form, the responses become compiled in this spreadsheet for me. Okay, so this form is connected with this spreadsheet. That's one key idea. So as I mentioned, I'm going to play a quick video of this concept that I call the Google Docs comment spree. Basically, it's about leaving the students very short comments while they're actually writing, either in the brainstorming, writing, or revising section. So I'm going to load the video and should begin to play. Shortly. So um, that, as I mentioned, is something that I know not all teachers would like to try. But going back to the idea of the living text that facilitated the better in-person conversation, I noticed that lots of times when doing that live feedback while students are in the writing process, they're more likely to stop, notice my comment, and come to talk to me about it in person, or reply to the comment with a question that I can then follow up with. So that really begins to tap into the social aspect of writing, and which actually nicely leads into um, my using Kaizena. I've also done the live feedback using this tool called Kaizena, which I think I will let Max um, speak about and describe. So, Max, you go ahead, say what you're give maybe a description overview of Kaizena, and then I'm going to give another little quick modeling of how, as an English teacher, I use it with my students.
Sure. So, Gerard, I really like that you, in fact, I think you may have been one of the first people who started talking about the feedback loop as a conversation. And we've really kind of taken ownership of that idea here, the team and I, that feedback should be a conversation. Um, and, even though we've kind of been, I suppose, helping teachers have a conversation with their students for a long time now, we didn't really realize it until recently. So thank you for that. But here's specifically what Kaizena lets you do to have a conversation with your students about their work. Um, Probably the thing that's most popular with teachers, that is really amazing for teachers and really amazing for students, is voice comments. So the way this works is you just make a highlight anywhere in the student's work and click record and start speaking. And this lets you just record a quick thought or a longer thought. And the reason that this is so great for teachers is because we all speak up to 75% faster than we can type. So you can get a lot more across in the same amount of time or even less amount of time. And the reason this is so great for students is because it makes students feel like you as a teacher really cares about their work, about their writing. Think about when you write something maybe in a public manner or for someone else, or that will be posted up on the internet, or that might end up in its way into a newsletter, or you put a lot of yourself into your own writing. And it's very difficult, especially for students who are perhaps somewhat self-conscious about their work, to separate their own identity from their work. So as teachers, if you are critical of a student's work, students may find it very difficult to separate that criticism from themselves, even though the criticism is very important to help them understand what they can do better. And so effectively, voice comments lets you wrap your feedback in a tone of voice that makes them confident that you're really on the same team, that you're on their side, you want them to succeed, and on top of all that, it's more efficient for you. So that's voice comments, and that's one of the things that Kaizena does, and does really well. There are other things that we do as well to make feedback more efficient for teachers and more effective for students. But I think the voice comments is probably the first step to get into it. So Gerard, why don't I pass it back off to you, and you can model it.
All right. Thanks, Max. Really good point, and which just in my practical, focused thinking, sometimes especially when dealing with technology, I sometimes neglect to mention about the empathy and inflection of your voice and the power of that. So um, that's definitely a benefit that I've experienced, and that I'll show to you right now in a quick modeling of how I use Kaizena. So again, coming back to the theme of collaboration and the social nature of writing, the Kaizena allows me to give the students more feedback, which they can then reply to, so that their feedback is in a loop, in a conversation, and ultimately, um, to me, using Kaizena has just made the students better writers. I actually have written a very long article about this on my blog, which I'll send out to you with a follow up. But with that said, I'm going to load up another short video demonstrating how I use Kaizena. You'll see a couple of the features, including linking to lessons, giving text comments, and leaving voice comments, like Max said. All right, so um, that's one thing that maybe I didn't emphasize in the video, but I would like to say now is that the the reason that I've stuck with using Kaizena now going into my third school year is because often with technology, the power of it is directly tied to or can be directly tied to the learning curve of use. But the thing I like about it is the first time you use it with students, you need to um, walk through the use of it with them. But after that, they see that little italic bold message pop up that says you've got a Kaizena comment, and they jump right in there, plug in their headphones, and begin to use it. So um, I've noticed students revising more after I've used voice comments, and also the students returning to the comments several times, which for me is not something that happened very frequently with um, written comments. And then, of course, can't really happen too much with conferencing, where, of course, you have the value of the eye contact and face-to-face conversation, but you don't have that permanence of an audio file. Um, so we've had the closing question, the comment spree, Kaizena. One last way that Google Docs and the tools associated with it are able to turn feedback into a conversation and also just make managing writing a simpler process is through using the add-on Doctopus. So the last demonstration portion of the workshop will be showing how you can copy documents, manage them, and organize them with this Google add-on, Doctopus. This will be especially useful for teachers who, as Farah asked in her question, if I teach in a Google Apps for Education school, not I haven't done that yet. We might move that to that in the future. So this next video is especially good for you if you don't have something like Google Classroom available to you. All right, so as you watch how to copy and manage documents with Doctopus, also feel free to ask questions for me or to Max about the feedback section or any earlier section of the workshop.
And I do have to jump out here in about
Okay.
10 minutes. So if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer just in the sidebar as we go.
Okay, thanks, Max. So again, as you're watching this video, feel free to put in your questions about it or about any other earlier part of the workshop. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully you can see why I pre-recorded that demonstration. The, the technical pieces of it um, were better suited for pre-recording. Also, taking out some of that wait time seemed like the right thing to do. So that was the part I showed you there was the managing of the student work. And through the sending of the personalized emails, students can then directly reply, which can help clarify confusions about the directions and just begin conversations. But the part that I'll follow up with and send you a little bonus video of is really the most powerful, in my opinion. So in terms of demonstrating specific feedback tools, we had the closing question, the comment spree, Kaizena, and then Doctopus for sharing and managing documents. So we had the authentic literacy experiences, collaboration, and then feedback as the three main themes, in my opinion, that make up this concept of social learning with Google Docs. So while we're just over the 8:30 time now, I'd like to invite you to do one of two things. Use the chat to ask a question, or since we, in the beginning poll, had several of you say that you use Google Docs in a creative way already. I'd love to hear some of those ways too. So in the chat, either take a moment to ask a question or to share one of the creative ways that you use Google Docs. And like all teachers who maybe do a bit of over planning, I have a few questions that I anticipated from you. So while you're typing out your questions or thinking, here's three common ones that I either hear discussed often or thought of myself, asked myself. The first being, what if we're not a one-to-one school, right? What if not every student in my classroom has a device, a laptop or an iPad with them every day? I think nearly all of these ideas demonstrated here, maybe with the exception of the comment spree, can be implemented over the course of time instead of within a single lesson, right? So if you wanted to do that connected reading and do an article where the students were annotating with comments, that doesn't have to take place live the way that we did it. It could take place over the course of a week, and students can go to the library, do part of it in the classroom, do part of it after school. Farah says she has a million questions. I'm free to answer your questions via email after the workshop as well. What about BYOD? Only recently have I noticed that students don't mind using Google Docs on their phone, which I was really reluctant at first to even allow. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but at first that seemed like there's no way you can do sustained typing and thinking using Google Docs on your phone. But a few times I remember seeing students working in groups, and they would be sitting at a round table, and a couple of them would have their phones out, even if there was a computer available. So I think increasingly students are mobile first, even when it comes to doing their schoolwork. Of course, typing a 10-page paper, it may not be mobile first, but it's more mobile first than we might think. So we have a few questions coming in. Can Kaizena and Doctopus be used by teachers with a tablet? For Doctopus, as long as you're able to download Google Chrome on the tablet, so for example an iPad, then yes. For Kaizena, you need microphone access and then also Google Chrome. So if those two capabilities are met, then you should have no problem using Kaizena and Doctopus. If you want to follow up with the specifics of the device you're going to use, I'll be glad to look into it further. The idea here on a creative use of Google Docs. Similar to your research unit, this comment says, I will periodically give a short essay and ask a class to compose one giant essay. I help them organize themselves and work together to make it work. Afterwards, we attach a rubric and students evaluate the work with me. This sounds like a great idea, and it taps into the collaborative nature of Google Docs, the smarter assessment in general that I think Google Docs facilitates, and also the engagement that can happen when you're breaking the norm of just here's an essay, collect it, and the teacher grades it. Great ideas. Okay, Justin, on the iPad, I think you'll have no problem using Kaizena and Doctopus as long as you download Google Chrome. The third question I planned was more of a comment. My school isn't Google Apps for Education. That's okay. Nothing that I demonstrated or talked about here today requires Google Apps for Education, which, if you're wondering what that is, it's a specific, basically domain of Google where the school gives students and teachers Google accounts. It's admittedly a little bit less organized when we don't have school domain Google accounts, but I walk students through creating a Google account if they don't have one very early in the year in order to facilitate all of this that occurs in the classroom. Just as some feedback for me and out of curiosity, here's the last quick poll. Maybe as some of you are thinking of questions, which idea are you most likely to use in your classroom? If there's an idea that you've already used, you're welcome to select that one or select the one that you'd like to use instead in the future. So again, if you click over to polls, I'd love to know which idea you're most likely to use in the classroom. All right, so it seems like the connected reading, the research rally are both popular. Oh, the connected reading is the most popular so far. I'm actually surprised the digital essay and Kaizena maybe don't have some votes. I think those are the ones that appear to have more barrier to entry. So I really recommend you take some time maybe on your own first to explore those before jumping into them with the students. Okay, a couple other questions. Would you recommend using Doctopus in conjunction with Google Classroom? Well, according to my understanding, a lot of the functionality is similar or maybe even repeated. So I would just go by whichever one seems to be more user-friendly to you. I think you can do all of the capabilities of Google Classroom with Doctopus, to be honest, but I would just go play around with both and look at whatever one seems easier for you to use. I'm just reading another comment that we do have Google Apps for Education, but no one here has used it yet. I used it for the last month of school last year, and it was a game changer. Can't wait to learn more and help my colleagues learn too. That's some great feedback. So it seems like the connected reading, aka the living text, is the clear victor in terms of which idea you're most likely to use on your own. So I know we've gone over the time limit here. I really appreciate you giving me your time, almost 2 hours now on a summer night. A lot of you, most of you actually, had individual conversations with me during the planning of this workshop, or just through my teaching in general. And so I'm very grateful for your participation in what is culminated in sharing these ideas with you tonight. So I'm going to stay on for a couple extra minutes. I know some of you logged in a little late. I'll be welcome to go over things again. I'm going to put one more link in the chat, and this one, to be honest, is a total experiment. If you found this useful and you're on Twitter, I'm playing around with something called Click to Tweet, and you'll be able to post a little tweet saying, I just learned about Google Docs for social learning, and you can share that. So that's just something that I discovered and thought was pretty cool, and maybe you want to click on that link and send that out. Here's a great question, and this is something that I plan on doing in the future. The question basically is, what do you think of using Google Docs as a blog? This is, I think I'd like to acknowledge Farah. Today was her first day of school. She said she's fried, yet she's still sitting here on the workshop, participating a lot. So my props to you, Farah. But your question about, can we use Google Docs as a blog? I played around with using EduBlogs, and to be honest, in the early parts of the year, as the students were starting to learn it, they really hated it. So I think they were writing about their independent reading too. So I think it was sad for me that they hated it so much. But I think if I kept it to one platform and have them just create a blog document like you suggested, you can just as easily share that with the public too. Like, one good thing that came out of my students blogging was that I tweeted the links of a couple of reviews of the book No Choir Boy to the author, and the author wrote back to the students and to us. So you could do the same thing in a Google Doc. It has that ease of publishing and posting. But to answer your question, I think, yeah, using the Google Doc as a blog, a running weblog, is a great idea. Sure, a weekly reflection in a Google Doc would be great too. You could even share that with parents for positive or just necessary reasons. So again, everyone, I'll stay on here for a few minutes. If anybody who came in late, I'm welcome to. I'll be glad to go over parts of the workshop that you may have missed. Feel free to also ask your questions. If you'd like to, again, check out the tweet link, feel free to do that. Another question I see here, with Google Apps for Education, that is one hang up that you can't share outside of it, I don't believe. There's other teachers on here who use Google Apps for Education. Can you guys weigh in on that? Is there any way to share student work outside of the school domain if you're on Google Apps for Education? Andrew, Danielle, you have any insight on that? So everyone, just to wrap things up, you'll be getting an email with a recording of the webinar, the workshop. So when you have the resource guide plus the recorded video, I think that'll be a useful resource for you in implementing any of these ideas. However, just like to give an invitation to those of you who I don't know, who I don't see in person, for any of these ideas as you begin the school year, you implement them and you need more help. I'd be glad to do a Google Hangout just like this, but in a one-on-one to help you go through these ideas and implement them. Um, so Andrew and Josie are weighing in to answer Farah's question. It seems the consensus is that district settings dictate whether or not you'll be able to share documents outside of your school domain on Google Apps for Education. If you'd like, you can also go back through the resource guide that I shared with you, and if you'd like to look there and then answer any questions based on that, I'm going to throw the link back in the document again here. And I'll stay on here for about 10 more minutes until around 9 p.m. So again, just to reiterate, look for the email with your, well, you're welcome, Josie. Thanks very much for all your kind words and your feedback. I'd love to learn about how you might use any of these ideas heading into the new school year. So keep in touch. You'll get an email with a replay of the workshop, and that will be separate from just the YouTube video. You can actually still ask me questions on the replay video, so look for that. Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate your participation. You're a great participant, answering some questions and throwing your comments out there. Thanks so much. All right, so Farah asked a good question. Let's see, I'll share my screen again and we'll go through creating a folder. First of all, so it's really as simple as this: new folder, and then maybe you say lesson plans. Right, but the powerful thing about something like Doctopus was, I'll show you a quick glimpse again. When you use Doctopus, it creates folders. So here's my 10 Honors 3 folder. It'll create folders for all of your students automatically, and then all of your assignments automatically. So again, the new folder is just as simple as new folder, but you can really leverage the power of the folders for your own organization. So that's how you can better use folders. All right, so Casey, Josie, Matt, Becky, Farah, thanks so much for sticking around until the, the end here. Um, See you, Farah. As I said, I'll stay on for a couple more minutes. Um, Feel free to ask your questions. You can also ask questions via email or share your ideas of how you've used Google Docs. Um, and when you watch the reply video, you'll be able to add comments there as well. Any last questions, anyone? All right, Casey and Matt, the last two. Casey meet Matt, Matt meet Casey. I think I've repeated myself enough, so I'll just hang out and see if any of you guys have a comment or something to share. Thank you so much for coming to watch. I was very nervous when this started, but once once it got rolling, I got a little more comfortable. So it helps having people I know to watch. So thank you so much. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. All right, Casey, thanks for sticking around to the end. Can you access the chat? If so, answer. How are you? All right, thanks again. I'm going to sign off now. Thanks for watching.